Everybody in the general public knows about their residential real estate agents, the realtors that are selling them homes, but they don't realize that in commercial real estate, and in particular with development, how many different types there are. Think about brokers. It's not just what are they providing, but who are their other clients and what insights have they gained from those other clients that they can provide to you.
So brokers, commercial real estate brokers, and how they affect development. So I don't know if you want to kind of start by listing out the different brokers, especially the ones, whether they're experts in investment sales, retail leasing, etc.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know that we don't operate just the development side, but with the brokerage with EXP Commercial and the J3 team that we have, we see both sides of things. You know, in my background originally with NRI and the development work that we did there, I got a lot of exposure to the different types of brokers that we had to work with throughout the process. And like you said, everybody thinks of brokers. Everybody in the general public knows about their residential real estate agents, the realtors that are selling them homes, but they don't realize that in commercial real estate, and in particular with development, how many different types there are. And just at the front end, obviously you have your people that are selling you the land or whatever your development opportunity is. You have debt and equity brokers, people that are working in the capital markets. And then you typically will have your leasing brokers or leasing agents, depending on what type of thing that you're doing. And those can obviously get specialized by property type. And then beyond that, you have your investment sales brokers that are handling the actual end product, or not even necessarily the end product, but sometimes the original product that they just buy and sell things, not even necessarily from a developer.
Yeah. And then in our case, currently building townhouses, we actually need to use luxury residential brokers to sell our product, and actually just so happens to be a part of our capital stack. And I don't know if you want to go right into how it affects the capital stack and how it affects the design, and when you bring up what time you bring those specific brokers into the deal. But what I've learned is they usually lend good ideas and a little bit of insight to the market that sometimes a developer wouldn't have thought originally. So it's sometimes good to talk to not just every single type of brokers, but different groups, right? Based off of their experience and what deals they've worked on in the past.
Yeah. One of the big things that you want to do, and with my experience in working in multiple markets, is rely on your brokers as your local experts. So one of the things that I've done a lot of, not just on the land brokerage side, but also with, like you said, the luxury residential agents who not just understand what the product is and what's going on in the market, but they understand the actual minds of the buyers and the trends that people are looking for. So all of the people are, you might see in all your comps, right? You as the analyst are going to look at your comps and you're going to say, oh, the 3-bedroom units are the things that sell absolutely the best. But what the reality might be, and your residential agents, or even if you're working with investment salespeople, they might tell you that the 2-bedroom units are actually the thing that are asked about most often, or the 4-bedroom units are the thing that nobody can get. So you might want to modify what your plan is based on what that agent feedback is. And you, just as a developer coming into a new market, aren't necessarily going to have those types of insights. And even if you're a developer who's been in a market, you might not have that insight because it's something that's changing and you're busy doing the development work. You don't necessarily have that level of depth of discussion with the people that aren't buying.
Yeah. And more often than not, they have the good data, right? And it's about sifting through that data to find out ultimately what the decision will be for that aspect of the deal. But on the other hand, there is sales involved. So I don't know if you want to touch on how you kind of gauge any broker to make sure that they're not just trying to sell you on something that may not be in your best interest in going into in the first place?
For me, it's always about checks and balances. One of the processes that I go through, not just with brokers, but with any of the consultants that we're hiring or anyone else, is checking with multiple different sources. So I will talk to them and get at first just a sense of who are they, what are they offering, do I already have some knowledge and background information that I can check that against, or am I going to check with them going back to this new market idea? If I'm checking with someone in a new market, I'm probably going to check with 3, 4, 5 different people and see if I get the same type of information from them. And it's really, like they say about real estate in general, is it's a people business. And so do you get a good sense and a good feeling about the truth that's coming out of the different people? And some of the people that you know, over the last couple of years that you've been working with Costello and with me, you've met with different people, and you know, we come back to the office and we say, okay, what did you think of that person? And sometimes it's like, well, they're a salesman, right?
Yeah. But if you're hiring them, you want a good salesman.
You want a good salesman, but like you said, it's about the data. Like, are they trying to sell you on something, on their capability or some particular product, or do they really know what they're talking about to be able to sell it?
Yeah, of course. And then generally everyone knows of the big shops, CBRE, Brokerage, JLL. And then of course on the capital market side, many of these big shops do it all, right? Where do you see the benefit of using maybe a smaller middle market broker in terms of that maybe just being an expert in, for example, investment land sales in Miami, right? Is it based off of, again, you said reputation, knowing what deals they may have done and asking some of your current relationships that have dealt with those people? Or is it more about the maybe current listings that they have and the current relationships that they have that you may not have?
So I can give you a couple of examples from even at NRI. I worked with both larger firms and smaller local firms. And with our larger firms, we worked with Avis & Young on the very early stages of the thesis project. And when I first came into NRI, I was assigned particularly to work with one agent or one of the new agents who was at Avis & Young.
And is this for you had already purchased the land?
We hadn't purchased it.
So it's about valuation.
We were under contract.
Okay.
And that's where I was going with it. It's actually the underwriting. And this is one of the big value adds that the land brokers can assist with, is knowing what all the different comps are and what are the values that you're trying to come up with at the end of the day for rent, for sales prices, your cap rates, right? All these things that you're projecting 3, 4, 5, 6 years in the future. How are you coming up with that? And what are their insights? And I've talked to you quite a bit about the way that I think about attorneys, think about brokers. It's not just what are they providing, but who are their other clients, and what insights have they gained from those other clients that they can provide to you. And so at the big brokerage side of things, that knowledge, that institutional knowledge that they can bring back to you as one of their additional clients is one of the biggest things that they can provide value for. And then with Avis & Young in particular, I was working with Brian De La Fay, who's still at Avis & Young and currently one of the top brokers in Miami for large land pieces all over downtown Brickell, the greater Miami area. And so him and his team are, to this day, some of the best, some of the experts. And Brian and I would just be sitting there doing underwriting on these deals. He didn't have all of the knowledge personally back then that I'm sure he has today, but the institution of Avis & Young had brought that in, and then they had the resource to assign a newer agent to sit there with a development company and just go through with the analyst and associate, just sitting there going through all of the underwriting, all of the different what if scenarios so that you could put together a really good package. And that package could then be used for your LPs, for the banks, for your internal knowledge. So all that to say, there's like definite value in the large brokerage structure for certain types of activities. On the other hand, the smaller brokerage that we were working with, we had signed up Centerline Real Estate Services, and it was Tony and Lindsay at the time who were working together and helping us with our listing. And they had a lot of really great tenant relationships. They're primarily a tenant rep brokerage. And
what property was this for?
For both of the properties.
For both of the properties.
Yeah.
Retail leasing.
When I say both, to let everyone else know, what I mean is Gables Station, which is now called Lifetime, is 500 apartment units, about 120,000 square feet of retail. Sits on 4.5 acres, and it was sold for $430 million in 2022.
It's a big chunk in 2022.
Yeah, one of Florida's largest sales. It sold it to Hines. And then, so that was one of them. And one of the good relationships that they had was Trader Joe's that they introduced us to, right? And then they obviously helped us with the rest of the strategy of 120,000 square feet of retail is a difficult thing. And then beyond that, we had another 30,000 square feet of retail at Paseo, which is now called Thesis Residences and Hotel. So there's 245 hotel rooms, 204 apartment units, about 30,000 square feet of retail in that one. That one we recapitalized in 2021, and also, over $200 million worth of value in that. And so they helped with that one as well. We went through several different grocers that we were targeting for the larger block, and we've spoken about this on this podcast before about how that retail component got shaped and how we made modifications on the fly to try to enable that. And Centerline, because they're a boutique, because they had great relationships, and because they had, decades of experience in doing this, they were able to help us navigate very tricky situations with how our parking was, who the tenants were, what the objections were. So there's pros and cons to the big brokerages and also with the smaller ones. We wouldn't have gotten that type of attention from a CBRE or someone like that for the types of issues that we were running into.